Okay, it's burning. Good enough. It's burning. The January thaw is kind of over now. Okay, but is it? Speaking of the thaw, well, it looks like our economy is kind of slowly thawing out to begin with. I just watched a thing from the making of this video about 2014, what they're expecting for the Canadian economy and stuff like that. And some of the economists on there, some of them are well known and stuff like that, and are outspoken against this and outspoken against that. And other ones are just kind of going with the norm. But all of them, I think there was about 4 or 5 of them, all of them kind of said the same thing. You know, like the Canadian economy, just like I've been saying for the last couple of, since 2008, has been kind of just, you know, I would say the American economy is on life support. Canada is just bedridden. You know what I mean? We're not up and mobile. We're just like barely any growth, lose a little bit of growth, gain a little bit of growth. We're just hovering the line, you know. We're borderline recession. Now, right now, we're in the down season because it's wintertime, and you know what it's like in Canada in wintertime. People just don't go anywhere, you know. If you don't have to go somewhere, you won't go somewhere. That's typically the way it is. So they're talking about the economy and how like the housing and stuff like that's kind of iffy. There's been talks of a bubble. They say there is no bubble. They say there might be a bubble. I think there is a bubble, but it's creating slower. Like with the Americans, they have lower interest rates than what do we do. What they did here in Canada in 2008 is they raised the interest rates high enough so that they could still lower them if they need to. I think it's like 3% or whatever it was. You'll have to look it up for yourself. 2.8% or whatever it is, but. So they raised them, but they didn't raise them too high. And Canada was the only country in 2008 that kind of weathered the storm. It doesn't mean we're not going to catch the cold in the end, you know what I mean? So the next economic crash, if it comes out as a full crash, there's no way Canada is going to, we just don't have the growth. In fact, they're saying, okay, well, we're at the point now where it's getting to a bit of a stagnant where we can't quite keep up to our immigration, which this is why I say we've got to cut our immigration drastic. 250,000 people a year. I get it. Over a decade, it's only 2.5 million people, but 2.5 million people that you can, that you're going to have to provide. And this is the way people don't think when they think of immigration. Okay, they're thinking of all these poor people coming over for a better life. Well, number one, it's not poor people coming over to Canada as much because we have a higher standard. It's harder to get into Canada now than what it used to be, but more people are coming in. So the Conservatives more than doubled, or almost doubled. Because the Liberals used to bring in 130,000 people a year. We now bring in 250,000. So it's just about doubled. Most of them now are economic. 61% are like economic immigrants, basically. But the thing is what classifies as an economic immigrant. We had a whole bunch of strippers come in to Canada as economic immigrants, so they put a kibosh to that. So exotic dancing is no longer considered an economic immigrant. Yeah, that was a new law this year. It's like, we're going to bring in people. But they're bringing in people to work at Timmy's. They're bringing in people to work at, and then you've got these visa programs. We had like 2,000 Chinese last year or the year before come into work, at this refinery. So insourcing and stuff like that, which is, to me, is insourcing. Absolutely not jobs for the people here. The problem is there's a lot of people here don't have the skills, so that's why we're doing the insourcing. But that could catch up pretty soon. And there's other reasons why they do the insourcing is because they pay people 15% less. So that said, you got to understand how our immigration is working first before we talk about the economy and immigration. And I'm not an expert. You got to look into it for yourself. You never take anybody at the 100% value. You got to go and look into it for yourself. So what they're saying is because the job growth is just marginal. What I'm saying is if you bring these people in, it's not just a matter of giving them a job. You actually have to have wealth, and that's what Canada does. That's what no country on the planet right now really has. Not even China. They don't have wealth. They have imports and exports. That's what they have. And they have communism. So they don't have wealth, but they can generate wealth with the infrastructure they have. That's the thing. Again, when you're building the cheapest stuff from the lowest bidder on the tightest budget, you're going to, if you're racing to the bottom, of course you're going to get there. This idea that, we have to lower our dollar so we can increase imports and exports, well, right there tells you that your country's dead in the water because you're at the mercy of other countries buying from you. Where if you have a strong economy from within, imports and exports should just be the icing on the cake. It shouldn't be the mainstay of your economy. And yes, Canada is a resource-based economy. We get that. But it doesn't mean we can't take the resources and just build it inward. you know, uh, you know, it's this idea that we have to sell out to everybody. Like globalization is a ridiculous idea, if you ask me, because it doesn't work with the paradigm of a country. This idea that because you always have to go to the lowest common denominator. You have to keep competing with the people that are at the bottom. So you do need some fascism and protectionist ways to keep your country safe, to make sure that the people over there can't undercut your labor over here, or that you can't import people that are just going to work for cheaper, that type of thing. So they agree that the people, are coming in, okay, they may come in now, they may get a job now, but are they going to have health care? We're going to have enough for the retirement, all that old age care, all that stuff. They're going to come here now. In 20, 30, 40 years, the people that are coming in here now may be retiring. And if they are retiring, at 250,000 people extra a year, do we create enough revenue to take care of that? My quick answer is no, we do not. It don't matter if your population is 10 times the size. In China, what they do, they're the world's biggest savers. The people in China save money for themselves. They buy houses and cars in cash. They don't do anything on credit. Here we do everything on credit because we're so exceptional and everybody's so special and everything it deserves and everything's a right. Like to me, I don't mind if you earn stuff, but the idea that you should be subsidized on every aspect of your life, well, 2 plus 2 simply does not make 5, right? So that's the thing. That's why we need to cut the immigration now. See what we have, see what we need, and then as we need things, bring in only what you need. Like family unification, for example, is like I think 5,000 people a year. So that's not that big, but the way I look at it is okay. Even at a tenth the amount of people we're bringing in is still probably too much. 20,000 a year is probably still too much. It's just we don't have that kind of growth. You know what I mean? It's not distributed properly. I got a cat. And stuff like that, so it's not going to work. Now, I know I'm going an awful lot on the immigration thing here, but it is kind of playing into what they're saying. So, the housing bubble, well, again, our rates can go up a bit, but they can also go down a bit, so we gave ourselves some room there, but we're not talking a lot of room. It's just the idea that the people who have, and you see the same commercials in Canada too, have bad credit or no credit at all, don't worry about it. We'll give you, we'll just, put a higher interest rate, but, we'll give you whatever you want. So we're, in other words, we're doing the same things that got the Americans into their housing crisis right away. I mean, people are buying cars, with bad credit, and they're paying like something like, like ridiculous amounts of interest on it. Like almost 2/3 of the payment is basically interest. So it's ridiculous. So that just creates more poverty. It doesn't, it's not going to work. And a lot of people just can't do with that. Ultimately, the people have to self-moderate. It's like, look, if you can't afford it, you don't get it. But I need it. Too bad. Learn to do without. You'll be better. You'll sleep better at night, not worrying about the expense anyway. So there's that, and then again, the job growth is the same thing we're seeing in the States. It's all part-time stuff in retail, in the service industry, like restaurants and stores. That's it. So we're not seeing great innovation. We're not seeing and I think the biggest killer of innovation is the death spiral of small business. People go to school now, and this is a point I can't stress enough. People go to school, and when they get there, okay, their whole thing is, when I get out of this, I'm going to get a job. Well, right there's the problem. You're never going to make money working for somebody else. You really, really have to create your own empire. You really have to become a business owner. What kind of business? Wear many hats. See what works for you. I've attempted to do so many different businesses that I kind of lost count. I failed at almost all of them, but some kind of work for me. Some kind of don't. Find what works for you. Like I do trapping. Technically, I work for myself. I've been working for myself for the past 5 years. Not making great money, but it's things start to pick up as they go. You got to keep working at working. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. But the difference is that I am kind of my own boss. So it's kind of nice. But is it what you would call a successful business? No, I just get by. But it's starting to pick up more, and you try different things. Being an entrepreneur, that's what will stifle big government. Government they like dependence. They don't like entrepreneurs. So that's kind of how the Canadian economy is bouncing along right now. Now, because there's so many things I got to cover on the economic front that's going on right now, there's a lot of scary things coming down the pipe that, and I listened to one lady as she's an economist or whatever, and she's saying, oh no, the economy's doing not too bad because such and such said so, such and such said so, and it was all the mainstream stuff, and it's like, okay, but I don't think these people are telling you the truth, because when I look at what China's doing, and China is the big threat here, they're going for world domination without firing a shot. They've been doing it for years. It's pretty much exactly like I've been saying if you've been following my channel. Those are going to be our new rules. That is the role model for the world, is China. Problem is that's the blueprint they're going to use, but to implement, that's where it's going to get bloody. And I mean, we see what happens what's happening in Greece, Spain, Italy, and all places like that. Marcosi with his 75% tax on the rich. What do you mean all the rich people have just left the country? Of course. But at some point, it won't matter where you go to. And you can run, but you can't hide. The reason why they're doing this tax is for the ultra elites to have no competition. That's so it's not done to benefit And there's not even all you take the wealthiest people in the world, distribute their wealth. Even at that, it probably won't fix the problem, because the wealth has to come from the individual. And a lot of people don't understand. They only measure wealth in dollars and cents. They don't factor in quality of life. They don't factor in sustainability. They don't factor in the other things that that you go about on your day to day. They just let's say you never make $1 million or whatever a year or whatever. Let's say you live like me, only a couple $100 a month. But how well am I living? That's the question. How well are you? That's where the wealth is to me. Well, for those who follow my channel, all the different things I do. I'm not getting anywhere big fast, but I don't owe anything. Number one, I don't have any debts. And I'm not tooting my own horn here. I'm just telling you. And I used to have debts. I used to, I've had bank loans and stuff like that. I know what the stress is like that. I'm very manageable of how I do things, which allows me the opportunity to try new things, which is a wealth in itself. And that's the part people don't get. You need to be an entrepreneur. A job won't get you anywhere. Problem with a job is it takes up all your time and keeps you from doing the things you enjoy doing. And if every person, I used to do a lot of work for senior citizens, and they always said the same thing. If you can find a job you like, that's half the battle. That's like 90% of the battle. The money is really not as stressing as you think. Now, the other thing too is, I work for myself. Okay, I don't make a lot of money, but I don't work a lot of hours. Think about that. I spend an awful lot of my time sitting on my butt. You know what I mean? That's wealth in itself. I'm getting 40. Well, I'm not getting. I am 40, and I do labor work and stuff like that. That's one of the many things I do. When I'm 60, I'm going to be worn out. Let alone if I make it to 67 to retire. That's the kind of work I do. But working smarter. I'm finding ways of working smarter now, doing other different things. And what I'm finding is that, if things keep going the way they're going for me, it'll become sustainable. I'm not going to live outside my means, and that's a big one. You have to live within your means. So you really have to become your own central banker. You really have to become your own business, entrepreneur. You really have to, kind of create your own empire. How big, how small, that's up to you. Some people, they want to own the world. Some people's okay, but you also have to learn how to deal with failure. That's the big one, and that's why we have too big to fail. That's why we have, because nobody can fail, because if we just let it all go, the banks will fail and the whole world will fall apart. I think Iceland kind of got it right. They didn't get it perfect, but they did the right things. Put the corrupt bankers in jail. Canada here. Are our bankers just as corrupt? Kind of arguably yes, kind of arguably no. We are incrementally stepping into the right direction. Problem is it's been so damaged over the years that you can't just do it overnight. You collapse the entire economy. If you said, okay, well, that's it, we're no longer going to prop up anything, everything fails overnight, because almost everything that is propped up by the government, whether it's large agriculture, whether it's the oil sands, whether it's anything that's propped up, Air Canada should go out of business 100 times by now. CBC, they should, they lose more money every year than, you know what I mean? So if we just say, okay, well, we're going to just balance the budget, trim the fat, you guys figure out who to fire. they do that, hey, you'll see unions disappear pretty fast. You know what I mean? It's like, well, do we want product or do we want unions? You know what I mean? Paperwork for the sake of paperwork. So there's no efficiency in the government sector. Because there's no efficiency in the government sector, it's a big boat anchor on everybody else. Now that said, you get rid of a lot of government stuff and just allow people to own their businesses. Just tax them very, very lightly. Give them the benefit. They'll pay it forward. Again, you don't need to make $1 million a year to live well. You need to be able to just live well. You know what I mean? Because there's so many other aspects of it. Again, to factor in there. But our economy, again, it's just that kind of hovering the line. So that's where the Canadian economy. It's hard to say if it'll grow more. I don't think it really will because it's just too stagnant. I mean, the numbers from December, nowhere in the world. I mean, we're seeing. At first it was, it's going to be the best Christmas on record, and then it comes out it's really not. Like in the States, nobody has any money to buy anything. Super Bowl didn't sell out. In the States, okay, the Super Bowl, I guess it was. Apparently it didn't sell out. That always sells out. But that just tells you people don't have money, So if that's the trend, well, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse until we hit that correction, so to speak, of, okay, this is what it really costs, deal with it. But we're not going to get to that because there's other plans in play for China coming in and just kind of buying up everything, which they are doing. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Rate, subscribe, definitely share, comment, like, all that stuff. Okay, hi and welcome. Okay, it's burning. Good enough. It's burning. The January thaw is kind of over now. Okay, but is it? Speaking of the thaw, well, it looks like our economy is kind of slowly thawing out to begin with. I just watched a thing from the beginning of this video about 2014, what they're expecting for the Canadian economy and stuff like that. And some of the economists on there, some of them are well known and stuff like that, and are outspoken against this and outspoken against that. And other ones are just kind of going with the norm. But all of them, I think there was about 4 or 5 of them, all of them kind of said the same thing. Like the Canadian economy, just like I've been saying for the last couple of, since 2008, has been kind of just, I would say the American economy is on life support. Canada is just bedridden. I mean, we're not up and mobile. We're just like barely any growth, lose a little bit of growth, gain a little bit of growth. We're just hovering the line. We're borderline recession. Now, right now, we're in the down season because it's wintertime, and you know what it's like in Canada in wintertime. People just don't go anywhere. If you don't have to go somewhere, you won't go somewhere. That's typically the way it is. So they're talking about the economy and how like the housing and stuff like that's kind of iffy. There's been talks of a bubble. They say there is no bubble. They say there might be a bubble. I think there is a bubble, but it's creating slower. Like with the Americans, they have lower interest rates than what we do. What they did here in Canada in 2008 is they raised the interest rates high enough so that they could still lower them if they need to. I think it's like 3% or whatever it was. You'll have to look it up for yourself. 2.8% or whatever it is, but. So they raised them, but they didn't raise them too high. And Canada was the only country in 2008 that kind of weathered the storm. It doesn't mean we're not going to catch the cold in the end, you know what I mean? So the next economic crash, if it comes out as a full crash, there's no way Canada's going to, we just don't have the growth. In fact, they're saying, okay, well, we're at the point now where it's getting to a bit of a stagnant where we can't quite keep up to our immigration, which this is why I say we've got to cut our immigration drastic. 250,000 people a year. I get it. Over a decade, it's only 2.5 million people, but 2.5 million people that you can't, that you're going to